Right, good morning everyone. After writing 2 books about Maritzburg, umpteen, almost countless papers about the history, changing face of our city, this morning I want to rewrite it. I want to unpack this little unpretentious house behind us, bit by bit into its various parts, and on the basis of that, I'm going to suggest to you that although people say that I've practically rewritten the history of Pietermaritzburg, I'm saying it still has to be written. And as I hope to explain by looking at this little house, I think it has an importance. It's a pointer towards why we actually need the national dialogue that's been talked about so much of late.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rob's 3 R's. We have exciting news for you today. Today we introduce another R, and Rob is going to tell you all about that. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about today, in order for us to look at the future, we have to unpack the past. And Rob will do so taking into account a little house in Pietermaritzburg that is a treasure trove of history. Thank you, Rob. Welcome again.
Thank you. Talking about an art today, I think is a revelation. People have said that I've practically rewritten the history of Maritzburg. And in a way, I'm happy to say, yes, I have done certain parts of that. But the basis of research is that you continue to search it. Nothing is set in concrete, it's immutable. So there's no final word. So what I hope to do today is to just show that if we take one house and break it down into its components, understand how it was put together, that it can tell you a very different picture than saying, well, this is a Voortrekker place with a colonial layer on top of it and so on. And I think in doing that, we begin to understand how people have interacted in this city.
Yeah.
And our history has been biased against that.
Yeah.
They want to tell us that this country has been about wars, Afrikaners and English, whites and Zulus, all these wars.
Yes.
They took place. But in between all of those wars, there were other processes. There were other levels of interaction. Yeah. And I think this little house, what was that famous American TV show, Little House on the Prairie? Let's call this one A Little House in Maritzburg Tells You, reveals all sorts of things. Points to particular processes that people have learned to interact, to borrow from each other. We take things for granted.
Yeah.
English, Afrikaans, Zulu, Banichao.
Yes.
We just accept these things.
Yeah.
So I'm saying if we need to look at how we've evolved as a country, how different peoples from different religions, different languages, so on, have interacted with each other. And that we have a lot of things which unite us as South Africans that perhaps we're not acutely aware of.
Yeah.
Because the doctrination has been that there are no South Africans, that we are different ethnicities, etc., etc. And I think that, so talking about the little house, but I want to end off by saying I think it provides not just the story of a little house, but it gives strong pointers to the kind of interaction and discussions that we should have under this banner of a national dialogue. What kind of country do we want? Can we build a different kind of society in which everybody feels more at home and so on? I think this little house suggests very clearly, yes, not only is it possible, it has been done.
Yeah.
You just haven't taken the time to notice it and come to terms with it.
Yeah.
So that's a mouthful, but let me
Great.
Can I start at the beginning?
Yeah, so first tell us where this house is.
Okay. It's a little house, 284, what was originally Loop Street. Maritzburgers simply called it Loop, as if there was a loop. And I had to say to no, it's an Afrikaans word, loop,
Loop, meaning
which means walk.
Yeah.
Let me get back to the beginning. I arrived in Pietermaritzburg, settled here in January 1974. I was
Okay.
appointed as a lecturer on the Pietermaritzburg campus of the then University of Natal. I was a cultural geographer.
Yeah.
And cultural geography, almost by definition, is that you study how people transform a physical landscape into a cultural landscape.
Okay. That's very
They
interesting.
give names to mountains, to grass, to rivers. So
Very
the minute I came to Pietermaritzburg and I hear Dorp Spruit,
Yeah.
I know straight away, hey, this place was laid out as a dorp, and that's the river from which they got the water.
The Dorp got the water.
Yeah. So you can go anywhere in the country. The minute you hear Dorp Spruit, you'll know it comes from a particular time period.
Yes.
Of course, most English speakers just had no, Dorp Spruit's just a name. It's an Afrikaans Dutch name, not realizing it's a very significant name. In addition to my geography major, I majored in Afrikaans Nederlands.
Yes.
Now, that was strange because at that time in the 60s, Wits, this English-speaking liberal university, had the best Afrikaans Nederlands department in the country. Afrikaans Nederlands, in other words, you studied Nederlands, Dutch, and how that gave birth to the Afrikaans language. So here I am, I find myself in Pietermaritzburg, and I'm looking at the street names, Dorp Spruit, and I'm thinking, wait a bit. I majored in Afrikaans Nederlands, so I go to the archives. I say, please, I want to see the minutes of the Natalia Volksraad. So here I am. 10 years after studying at Wits, I find myself in a place where my ability, not just to speak Afrikaans, but to go back to Dutch
Yes.
is critically important.
Yeah.
And I suddenly realized, hang on, all of the previous histories of Maritzburg were written by people who spoke English. So no disrespect to them, but literally the early Voortrekker history was beyond their ken. Okay. And in going through the minutes of the Volksraad, I come across the first town planning regulations,
Okay.
February of 1839. They list them. Article 5 of which says, "De woonhuizen zullen na aanwysing van een daartoe gekwalifiseerde persoon in den front gebouwd moet worden en in een gelyke linie." I've memorized it, as you can hear.
Yeah.
What it said was that all houses, okay, homes, houses, have to be built in the front of the property
Yes.
in a single line, and that line will be pointed out to you.
Okay.
So any house you see in Maritzburg which is built close to the street's edge, you can reasonably assume it's built in accordance with that regulation. So they're all over town. I can say, oh, that's a Voortrekker building and so on. And I say, no. It's set back. The Dutch insisted.
This must be on the road.
Yeah. So if that house's wall lines up with the others in the street, and if literally you open the door and step into the street, 9 times out of 10, that's telling you it was built in terms of that Article 5.
What was the reasoning for that? Or the ideology behind it?
Yeah, look, people have traced it back to Holland, that the Dutch seem to have an appreciation for the entire streetscape.
Okay.
They wanted each property to blend in with the other.
Yes.
All right, so if we're looking at this ordinary house. And I say ordinary because I was part of a committee which documented, catalogued every single building in central Pietermaritzburg. When we did it, he said, which buildings are worthy
Yes.
of some kind of preservation and so on. And we looked at it. So at first glance, you look at this building, and it's a small rectangular floor plan, but you also notice, wait a bit, it's built quite close to the street line. It doesn't, and also importantly, the front walls and so on are painted white. It's sort of a grey colour now, but for many years they were white. So, which was a Cape Dutch feature. And then if you look, it's not a veranda, it's a very narrow stoep. And the stoep at each end has a semi-curved wall, which is a Cape Dutch feature.
Okay.
So at first glance, if you said to me, I'd say, this has very strong Cape Dutch exterior features, the whitewash and so on. The minute you get a bit closer, you think, wait a bit. If this is not built with mud bricks, which is what the Voortrekkers used, it's built with, by now, the famous Pietermaritzburg red bricks. They're red, but you can see they weather, they lose their redness, they become orange, almost pink in the afternoon sun.
Yes.
And so on. So you can see that, yeah. So your initial impression, wait, this was a Voortrekker house, you get close, you think, wait a bit. There's not only bricks, but it's English brickwork. So I take you in closer, bricks are, depending on which way you lay the bricks, it's known as English bond. I won't go into the detail, but there are 3 layers of stretchers, and alternate rows of headers. So it's built by proper brick people, bricklayers. It's built to last, and so on. Very important that even though the Voortrekkers were here early, in 1840, the Pistorius brothers started making bricks and tiles in Maritzburg. All right? So this house, built subject to that 1839 thing, but it's a very early example of the use of bricks.
Right.
So I'm speculating a little bit. Could well have been built by one of the original Afrikaners, got given this plot, this erf, but because the bricks were available and they would obviously look better and the house would last longer, they used bricks. Pistorius brothers made the bricks. They also made these half-round overlapping roof tiles.
Yes, I saw that. That's quite a prominent feature and very
Very
well.
prominent in Maritzburg. Most people assume that's a Victorian feature, and I'm saying wrong again. These were available from the early 1840s. Right, so, again, even though the Voortrekker period was quite short-lived, from 1839, by 1843 the British had taken over, and so on. Nonetheless, there are, even in those few years, you can begin to see some sort of indication going on. So you start saying, here's a house built in line with the Voortrekker regulations, whitewashed, with a narrow stoep, with a curved wall, a la Cape Dutch, and yet there's British brickworks. So what is it? Is this an Afrikaner who married an English-speaking woman,
Perhaps.
or vice versa? What is it?
Perhaps.
It creates all those kind of questions. It begins to question, that you start saying dogmatically, oh, this is this is that, and so on. You can look at other features. The 2 chimney pots are also very intricate brickwork. Another strong that they were,
So
say,
generally,
professional brickwork.
So generally, those 2 chimney pots, one would obviously be in a general living area,
Yeah.
and the other in the bedroom, perhaps?
Kitchen.
Kitchen,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, then you also see on this house the narrow stoop. There is some iron lacework. Not elaborate, but it's there just to, it's almost like icing on the cake.
Yes, yeah,
The
decorative.
filigree, whatever.
Yeah.
There are wonderful examples of that, of veranda treatments, firstly in wood and then later with imported ironwork and so on. So you end up saying, wait a bit, this is a house which could only have been built in Maritzburg at that particular time. So what house is it? This house becomes a different thing altogether. Now, and this is sort of a mea culpa, because I've built and I've written so much about Maritzburg, and I identified the Voortrekker layer, the English elements to it, and so on. And in a number of cases, I hinted at the fact that there was something else going on here,
Yeah.
and so on. So I've got a number of quotes if you look at, and I say hinted. I would say Maritzburg can be seen as a city with a Voortrekker layer, a Victorian layer, but I was saying it's more than the sum of those parts. It's much more than that. I perhaps should have spent more time exploring that idea and so on. But not that it wasn't popular then. One wasn't necessarily aware of that and so on, because the overlays tend to be so dominant
Yes.
that people forget. I think in some ways, English-speaking Maritzburg wanted to forget that the place had ever been.
Founded by someone other than
Correct.
them. Yes.
The very term Maritzburg College.
Yeah.
It's Peyton says, hey, we English didn't want this long-winded Pietermaritzburg. Pietermaritzburg. I mean, it's just, and so they shortened it. You know, it's almost like they're trying to disguise it, trying to disown.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the regions were Pietermaritzburg, as you said, and then it became anglicized as Pietermaritzburg.
Exactly.
And one better, Maritzburg.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was obviously something very peculiar to the English culture, where all kinds of names and pronunciations changed to suit them.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got three quotations, which I'd like us just to look at if we can.
Yes.
The first one, as I said, I hinted at the fact that there was more than meets the eye in many of these houses in Pietermaritzburg. And I suppose what I was doing was trying to throw out and hoping somebody else would pick it up and run with that idea.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Might not be the most exciting line of research, but it's interesting stuff to begin to look at old maps and old buildings and make sure you understand how they were put together.
So there's a challenge for the youngsters.
There's a challenge. But
There you go, guys.
But perhaps even more importantly than that, if we're saying that early in Pietermaritzburg, in the early 1840s, people were creating South African products. They were unique.
Yes.
They were unique to this place. Later, of course, Indian features came in. On the lower end of town, you've got very elaborate Hindu temples,
Yes.
which you find in South India. Across the road, the Hindu temple that looks more like a mosque.
Yeah, North Indian.
It's a North India.
Yes.
But because of group areas, these things are hundreds of kilometers apart in India. In Maritzburg, they're across the street from each other.
Actually, that little triangle is such a good example
Yeah.
to the rest of the world, if not India. I mean, we have South Indian temple, North Indian temple, and a mosque in East Street. And also the buildings there.
Sure. Oh, yes. Look, the
style of
gables,
the
the palm
buildings.
trees,
Yes, yeah.
the loquat trees. So there's a whole different townscape
Absolutely.
down there. And, of course, there's another Muslim precinct near the station as well.
Yes.
So that's subject for another day.
Absolutely.
So again, you get Maritzburg as a place where European, both Dutch, English, then Indian, you start adding now African stuff coming into it. Okay.
An absolute melting pot.
Well, I'm glad you used that term.
But
America sold themselves that melting pot idea. And I think that was prevalent for a long time. And I think it's been a negative thing because I think people get worried. They think, wait, I'm going to lose my heritage.
yeah.
What's going to happen to my culture? What's going to happen to my language? So we were scared to embrace being South African.
Absolutely.
Okay? You add a tribal element to that, then suddenly everybody. So it's not surprising. We went through a whole lot of history. And you can see the Afrikaners didn't want to become anglicized because the English outlawed. They said Afrikaans cannot be used in court. Hey, so what does an Afrikaner feel like? So for them, when they got in 1961, they could form a republic, could leave the British Commonwealth, that was their response to it, okay, which is understandable. But I'm saying, so our whole history has been, how do we avoid the melting pot? We want to retain our heritage. We want to retain our identity. In America now, particularly cultural anthropologists are reviewing and saying the whole concept of Black Americans. Because for a long time, Americans just said, look, these people come from Africa, but there's no African left. It's not African and so on. And that's been completely refuted. Because Black Americans, for instance, in their folk tales, what do mothers tell their children? They tell them stories. Those stories can be traced back to West Africa. I was in an anthropology class in America once. It was an afternoon class and it was getting quite boring and tedious. So I think I nodded off. Almost not quite sleeping, but nodding off. And I suddenly woke up with a start. And I asked the professor, I said, excuse me, what was that you were reading? And he said, no, it's a West African children's story. I said, but he said it was very popular in the American South. I said, I'm shaking because when I heard it, I was half asleep. I thought I was back in Africa. And he looked at me. I said, no, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
The cadence, the beat, not the language. Yes, it's broken English. But the way it was, the lilt,
Yes.
as a piece of music, the storytelling. I said, I might as well be listening to Quina and Tlope.
Yes.
You know, you can trace then folk stories, children's stories from West Africa. Okay. Now again, people assumed slaves were brutally taken from Africa, brought to America. Bob Marley sung about it, Buffalo Soldier, right? Stolen from Africa, brought to America, fighting on arrival, fighting for survival. Okay. And lo and behold, because the slaves were segregated, of course things were retained. Black people weren't allowed to interact with white people. So you end up then that sociologists, anthropologists would look at Black Americans now and say, yes, there is an Africanness, it's in there. It's been diluted, it's been changed and so on. And it's very different to white American stuff and so on. So that whole idea of cultural borrowing and change through time becomes very important. And that's known as acculturation. So it's not assimilation. It's not saying if you're white, you have to become black, or if you're black, you have to become white to be acceptable to live here. We have to accept that whether we like it or not, or whether we appreciate it or not, South Africans, by virtue of just growing up in this country, by virtue of living here, of hearing 6, 7 languages every day, of being maybe able to speak 2 or 3 of them, we've borrowed culture. But
Food.
we've taken it so much for granted that, you know, let's be honest, we were sold a lie. We were indoctrinated. We were told from early days, you're different. You speak different languages. So Bantu education was designed to say, no, we want you to remain dumb, unintelligent Bantus. We don't want you to grasp mathematics and science and so on. It failed. All of those attempts to separate us, to hold us back, to pigeonhole us, to say, no, you can't do this. That's not for you. Job reservation, all of those things. We've defied all of those things in our history. We've triumphed over all of those without people realizing it. You know, not to go into big ANC story here, but when the Freedom Charter in 1955 said, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, that's a fundamental statement. The enormous step which we took in 94 that literally overnight, we woke up the next morning.
Yeah.
Alistair Spark wrote a wonderful book, Tomorrow's Another Country. And literally overnight, the next morning, non-racial, non-sexism was now in the Constitution. I'm saying, and I hope that via these podcasts we can stimulate small groups that begin to discuss, what do we share as South Africans?
Yeah.
What do we like about each other's cultures? We're surrounded by all of these phenomenal things. People would have said to you, rugby's going to die, black people don't like it, the Springboks are hated. Well, now look at it. It's the most popular brand. No, it's mind-boggling. We need to have a fresh look at our history. And I hope this little house points us in that direction to say, hey, forget all that other stuff. Going forward, let's just accept who we are, take the positives, accentuate the positives. The national dialogue. We need to learn to talk to each other.
What do we want out of it? Yeah, we need to lay the foundations.
Yes. And that's going to take an effort from each of us. If it means coming to terms with different religions, different languages, different music, so be it. So be it.
So let's continue with that dialogue. Let's take it further. Let's make it relevant to the next generation.
Yeah.
So thanks, Rob, for that. Much food for thought. And of course, guys, share your thoughts with us on our social media pages as you watch our podcasts every week. Thank you.